Hi, I'm Dr. Lucy Hone. I specialise in grief and resilience. And today I'm going to talk to you about something incredibly powerful, rituals and legacy. So let me start by saying that when someone we love dies, there is sometimes enormous pressure for us to feel like we have to move on and get over them and sort of put the past behind us. And I want to say to you that that's just complete rubbish. And so in today's video, I want to explain to you what the new science from modern bereavement science tells us about how we can keep those who we love, have loved, still love, note the present tense, how we can keep them in our lives even though they're not physically here. So, first I want to say to you that a quick potted history of the research here, and I will keep this quick. So Freud, good old Freud, so much to answer for, used to tell people, his kind of taking on all of this was that in order to grieve, to adapt to the loss of someone, in order to move on and get over them, we had to sever our attachment with the dead. I mean, honestly, it's such a cruel thought, isn't it, the idea of severing our attachment? And this was the prevailing grief theory for a long time until the late 1990s, when researchers discovered that actually what was happening is that the people who were managing to adapt to the loss of their loved one were doing so by keeping their memory alive. And so this is called continuing bonds theory. And it is so important for us when we're grieving to understand that you don't actually have to write this person out of your life, that you can in fact find ways to keep them close. So by this is where rituals come in. And by rituals, sure, some rituals associated with losing a loved one might be religious, but actually what I'm talking to you about today are more of the deeply personal and sometimes very private and very often kind of micro practices, like small, tiny actions that you might take in your everyday life or at certain times of the year to honour that person and keep their presence even though they're not physically here. So essentially they give structure to your pain and meaning to your memories. They truly are, they kind of anchor us and in that sea of fear where you feel so desperately fearful that you're going to leave your loved person behind, that we all hate this feeling, don't we, of being pressurized to move on. And in the face of that, continuing bonds theory, I think, is kind of magical because it allows us to work out our own ways to keep them present so that we still feel connected to them. So what do I mean? Let's just give you some very basic examples. So it might be just lighting a candle and saying their name before you go to bed. I often, not all the time, irregularly, but I might just say Abby's name. I might just say, "Good night, Abby." I whisper it just before I go to sleep, just to keep that connection going. You might go and take a walk in a certain place or go and sit on a park bench that they loved or visit a cafe or a gallery that they loved. I once had a client who would go on Sundays, once a month, he'd go to the same barber that his dad went to have his hair cut in the same place. And so you get this idea that there's a kind of ritualistic aspect to this. But what I think is so important for you to understand is that they can be yours and yours only. You can share them, you don't have to. They can involve a myriad of ways to, of different kinds of practices. As I say, anything from wearing a piece of jewelry to baking a cake or visiting a place or, just so many different ways. So, but it is all about you and you have to find what works for you. The really great thing is that it's healthy, and that from a research perspective, I can say to you that doing so doesn't mean that you're being delusional, and it doesn't mean that you have an unhealthy attachment to the dead. It actually is, science shows that largely it is a very healthy practice. I suggest that we stop talking about moving on, and instead this is much more about carrying them forward. So let me give you some real life examples here. I've got some props today. This beautiful flower was made by one of my clients, Julie, and it was in memory of her daughter, Zoe. She made these. This isn't one from the funeral, but she made them for the funeral because Zoe was a staunch environmentalist, and so Julie knew that Zoe would hate the idea of having all these flowers that were going to waste. But what I love about this is that Julie gave me this sometime. We'd worked together for some time. She was a client who came on one of my courses, and then at some point we did get the opportunity to meet up, and she gave me one. So I think the potency of this ritual is demonstrated by the fact that I am now talking about Zoe, and that her life, who she was, what she stood for, is embodied by this, and in doing so we are keeping her memory alive. Our own thing that we did for Abby was, these are, some of you might have come across these are Abby dots, and after Abby, our 12-year-old daughter, was killed, I couldn't face the coffin, and so my dear friend Lexi decorated it with all of these dots. And then not only did she decorate the coffin with them, but then at the funeral, people put them on the lapel of their, whatever they were wearing. And then afterwards, people put them on anything from their water bottle to their phone, to their bed head, to their cars. Some money went to Make-A-Wish Foundation. Lexi donated some money. But I just love this idea that for us, these have always been this kind of brightly coloured symbol, youthful, girly, they're all Abby's favourite colours, symbol, to make sure that, a reminder to make sure that we tune in to what's important in life. And to me, they are the symbol of, we only have one wild and precious life. Try and make it count. Try and say yes. Try and do those things. And that's what our Abby would have wanted. Okay, so I thought I was just going to read you a little bit from my book today about rituals. So this is from Resilient Grieving. Grief is a byproduct of love and connection. Because we loved, so must we grieve when the person is no longer physically with us. However, the fact that they've gone doesn't mean we must stop loving them or thinking about them. Coming to terms with this fact, realizing that your love for that person doesn't have to die, is a major advancement in our understanding of grief. In the courses we run, helping people find their own way to grieve, this is always received with a mix of relief and something along the lines of, aha, well, that makes total sense. That's what I've been doing anyway. So I'm sure that's true of you. I'm sure that you've probably developed these kind of idiosyncratic rituals just because they remind you of your person. But on top of that, though, I also want to talk to you about legacies. So I think of legacies as what your person taught you. How do you want to live differently because they lived and because they died? What has this whole experience taught you? What is the legacy of this whole experience of their lives for you? What impact has it had on you? Has it taught you to be more empathetic, less judgmental? Has it shifted your priorities? Has it made you kind of wake up and smell the coffee or smell the roses? That kind of, has it given you a different worldview? Has it changed your friends? All of these things. So I think it's really helpful for us I think of rituals as the tiny small practices we can do. Lighting a candle, I gather foliage for my friend Sally because that's something she did. So those are the little tiny everyday practices. Don't have to be every day, but they sometimes are. But I think of legacy as their imprint. This is actually Bob Niemeyer, one of bereavement research's greatest researchers. It's his word. I really like that. What is their imprint? How has your life changed because of them? So think about rituals, think about legacies, and now maybe it's time just to pause for a moment. I've got 2 reflection questions I'd like to ask you. So what small personal rituals, daily or occasional, help you feel close to the person you have lost? You can pause the video here if you like and take a moment to ponder that. If you're sitting watching this with a loved one, you might have a discussion. If you've got your journal present, you might take some time, maybe even light a candle, put some music on, or go and sit somewhere else, but just take some time to journal upon that reflection prompt. My second question is about legacies. What's one way you can live your life that honours their memory or reflects what was important to them or what they taught you? Take a moment to think about them right now. How do you live differently because of them? Pause the video now if you like, and give yourself some time and space to reflect on this. Rituals and legacy aren't about letting go, and they're not about holding on in an unhealthy way. They're a balanced way of understanding that we can find ways to keep our love alive, that you can continue to love your person even in separation. But the trick is to find what works for you. So is it wearing a piece of jewelry? Is it wearing a piece of clothes, or buying that special bottle of wine, or choosing a cocktail that reminds you of them, playing music, writing their name in the sand, or even with a sparkler, just putting their initials with a sparkler at those times of year, at Halloween and things like that. What do you do at Christmas time and Thanksgiving? Just to know and acknowledge that they were here, they did live, they were important. So I hope this video has encouraged you to do all of those things. And as we wrap up today, I'm going to light a candle for Darcy. I never met Darcy. She was a 21-year-old girl, Australian girl, who died a few years ago. And I was invited to give a keynote by her parents on Mother's Day a couple of years ago. So Darcy died on Mother's Day. And I think that was a really beautiful legacy gift that they gave their community, that they've gathered together, a time when we were all together, all sorts of people who found Mother's Day tough, and they put on this event in honour of Darcy. So before we wrap up today's session, take a moment, think of your person. Take a big deep breath in. Hold it for 4. Breathe out for 4. Hold it for 4. We'll just do one more round of box breathing. Do it with me. I want you to breathe in for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4, 2, 3, 4. Out for 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4, 2, 3, 4. Thanks for joining me today. Yeah, if this has been helpful, then subscribe to my channel, follow me on socials, or sign up for my newsletter. And it's fantastic for me to be able to support you in this difficult time, because this truly is my legacy to Abby. If her loss and all that we've gone through can help others breathe that little bit more easier, then that makes her short life count for something. How can you live in a way that honours your loved one? Thanks for joining me. See you soon.